If you haven't yet, go subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, whatever you use to listen, go subscribe. And go follow us on Instagram at livinthedream506. That's livin, Livin, the dream dot, nope, no dot, 506. And if you like what you hear and you want to support the podcast, head over to patreon.com/livinthedream506. My guest today is the sampler and bass player for the band Lotus. If it sounds like I'm rambling or being a bit of a fanboy, well, I totally am. I'm a huge Lotus fan. I have been for a long time, somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 years probably. It's crazy. Anyway, this episode was a lot of fun and such a pleasure. So without further ado, please give it up for the one, the only, Jesse Miller.
Live in the dream. 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 Live in the dream.
All right, man. So thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
So right now, Lotus is off for a couple weeks. What are you doing in your free time?
Well, I just finished a session with Luke, who is the keyboardist and guitarist in the band, and also my twin brother.
Right.
And we do all the writing for the band. So we just did a session kind of finishing up a bunch of big bad demos that we were working on for the band. So or sort of the demo stage of the next Lotus album. So working on that, and I always have a bunch of projects in the pipeline. I have another band called Octave Cat that I'm always writing for, and I also do a solo project called Beardo Bees, as well as production stuff for other people. So anytime I get a little bit of break from Lotus, I'm putting time into one of those many projects.
Yeah, so it's nonstop, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I always try to stay busy to a certain degree. I mean, sometimes it feels like too much, but then anytime I have a day where I don't know exactly what I should be working on next, I almost start to freak out. So I always like to have something ready to go
To keep you sane.
Yeah.
Like, what else would you produce?
I wouldn't say a lot of things, but yeah, just since I'm pretty busy with Lotus, but I do mixing work for Lotus and Octave Cat bands who are like either friends of mine or people that ask me for it. I'm doing that stuff, like just kind of helping to structure songs, and if I'm working on mixes, helping them complete that process and just kind of move recorded projects along.
So Octave Cat and Beardo Bees, like, do you have much time for those? Is it basically just when Lotus is kind of taking a break?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for priority, or the way it kind of breaks down, it's probably 75% Lotus, maybe 15% Octave Cat, and then whatever's left split between Beardo Bees and other things that I'm working on.
Yeah. So just before we really get into things, I just want to reminisce for a second. The first time I ever saw Lotus was back in 2007, and you guys were headlining the Evolve Music Festival in Antigonish, Nova Scotia.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That was insane. Like, that was right when I was kind of getting into the jam scene, and you guys, like, I knew your music from albums and stuff, but the albums sort of don't really justify a jam band and the live presence. So, like, you guys came out and opened with Jump Off, and you played Wax and Daft Punk Around the World cover. And I just remember that as being like kind of like a turning point in my musical taste. It was just really incredible to see. And like the weather was crazy. The wind was blowing the lights all around. It was an insane night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
was-
I don't specifically remember the set, but I remember going out there. I mean, it seemed so far out there, but it was just some beautiful country.
Oh, I know. It's the drive just never ends. And then you finally get there and it's just like a haven.
Yeah, but that's awesome. Glad to take you to a new musical place.
Yeah, it was perfect, really. And so, and then after that, I saw you guys at Nativa in Maine. I think that was 2010. You guys played Lead Pipe, and I just remember everybody I was there with just thinking that was just mind blowing.
Yeah, kick it, break it, pop, electric, alright. 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 Yeah, kick it, break it, pop, electric, alright.
Awesome.
And then, yeah, so, and most recently I saw you guys at Holidays in 2017 and then at Red Rocks opening for Humphreys McGee. Just wanted to throw all that down and just say that it's an honor to have you on the podcast, man.
Oh, thank you very much.
So last week you guys played at Disc Jam, and Barber, the guitar player for Disco Biscuits, did he sit in for that entire set?
Yeah, it was. So John was replacing Mike Rempel for that set, and then we actually had a couple other guests. Some of the guys from, I don't know if you're familiar with the band Kung Fu. They're like so like a funky, proggy funk band. A number of members from that band sat in throughout the set as well. Adrian, their drummer, played percussion on one song. Rob played sax on Middle Road, and then Tim replaced John for Cold Facts.
Oh, wow. So just a plethora of cameos for that whole set.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it was us plus John, but yeah, got a few of the Kung Fu guys in, and that was fun to have them up.
Yeah. So how was that experience having them all play, especially like Barber for the entire set?
You know, in a lot of ways, it felt like not that much different than a Lotus set, since, you know, it was 4/5 of us and we were playing Lotus songs. But, you know, just getting, I guess the thing that was most revealing to me was I always think of our songs as fairly simple. But then when we were rehearsing these with John, I kind of realized, like, okay, they're not really as simple as you might think. There's, you know, multiple melodies and variations and phrase extensions, meter changes. All these things kind of add up to a lot to remember for, you know, learning 2 hours of another group's music for one show.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a really exciting sit-in for a lot of people, like on the scene, that got a lot of hype. Do you guys have any like other dream sit-ins or collaborations?
You know, one that I think would be really cool would be John Medeski sometime. I mean, he's just, I mean, indescribable musician and amazing improviser. So I think it would be interesting to hear him in the context of something like Lotus that's draws on some of those jazz ideas, but more in this extended sort of krautrock and dance thing. I'd be interested to hear what he would do in that context.
Yeah, his jazz stylings I think would complement Lotus just almost perfectly, really.
Yeah, that's one that I think would be amazing. I do think it is a little challenging sometimes, and why I would say we probably have a lot less guests than other jam bands is, we have 5 people and we're triggering samples sometimes, and it sometimes it seems like so much sound, like we have to even make an effort on our end to kind of strip things back and not make it too much to the point where it can those adding something else works against the whole instead of adding to it. So we usually try to be pretty judicious with when we have other people join us.
Yeah, you talk a lot about your sort of respect for minimalism and things like that, and I think that's kind of what you're addressing right there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't describe Lotus as a minimalist act by any means, but that is an aesthetic that I'm drawn to, and we try to take into account when we're composing and putting together music.
Yeah, absolutely. Before you guys became like a headliner coming up in the scene, did you have any moments that were just like a dream for you guys, like maybe playing with different bands that you idolized or like shared the stage with?
It's funny, we almost never did the opening thing. Even early on, we just played small shows as a headliner and kind of worked our way up that way. I think mostly because we wanted to stretch out, but also we're kind of a terrible opening band as far as production, because there's 5 of us and we take up a lot of channels and a lot of space. So we only did that a few times, but I don't know, if you think like a few festivals early on, just getting some of these spots. Like I remember, I forget what year it was, but one of these All Goods we were playing, they would do 2 stages next to each other. One's the big stage and one's a smaller stage, where they would have like 45-minute sets. But one year it was just this massive crowd, like 30,000 people or something. And we had this slot, I think it was between like Keller Williams and Bob Weir. And we just had these 45 minutes, but we just had a captive audience and we were playing this, high energy set. And I thought that kind of was like a marker of like, I think there was a lot of people there who hadn't heard the band before, and it just kind of caught the lightning. And I think we turned on a lot of fans at that set.
Yeah, that's a pretty big opportunity, and like a headliner's change over the stage, and you can kind of really steal an audience.
Yeah, and there's another one, the first Rothbury in Michigan, what now has evolved into Electric Forest, but originally it had a lot more bands and wasn't such a like EDM bass festival. Yeah. We had a really killer late night slot, and that festival, just no one knew what it was since it was first year, and the same kind of thing, just had a really big crowd and the set was just going off. So I think that was another one that they kind of like jump started the band and kind of elevated us to the next level.
Yeah. Before that, like, did you ever play in any bands before Lotus?
Just a little bit in high school. I had a ska band with some of my friends, like most people my age who grew up in the suburbs. And then I had 1 year of college before I joined up with the guys, where I was just kind of the resident bass player of this really small college. So I would play with the bluegrass band, like a jazz band, just like a psych band. I was just, young, right, and had time and wanted to play with everybody. So, yeah. But then, we started Lotus when we were in college. So really it's been my primary band for, about 20 years now.
Oh, wow. What was the name of the ska band?
Put that down, Chris. Pretty good. Not a ska pun, but as far as ska band names go, like right in that zone.
Nailed it. So after high school, you said you went into college and started Lotus. Now you were studying music, right?
Yeah.
So what was the plan if being in a band wasn't going to take off? Like study music, what was the job plan?
I didn't have one.
No.
I just, I, I guess I always was more of the theory of like, if you got a college degree and you didn't know what if you didn't have something going on immediately after that or going into it, like what you really wanted to specialize in would be like happen after that in grad school. So
Right.
I kind of figured just any kind of college degree would be fine. And what I wanted to do at the time was study music composition and read. So I was doing music and with a minor in philosophy. So kind of I'm doing both of those things.
Philosophy?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. What draws you to philosophy?
I guess just the first school I went to was called St. John's. I only went there a year, but I was doing, or everybody did, it was a great books program. So basically, the dead white man canon of Western culture and just reading all original sources. And I wanted to continue reading that material, even though I wasn't going to that school anymore. So philosophy kind of seemed like the best way to do as much of that reading as possible.
Yeah. So if the music industry wasn't a thing, like if it didn't take off, what could you see yourself doing for a living?
I mean, the kind of some of the stuff I do when I'm not doing Lotus, like engineering, mixing, production kind of stuff. Still, I do think like I would want to be doing something in music. But if you're saying something completely outside of that, then yeah, I don't know. Maybe some other art that's maybe like a visual art or film, something like that. Those to me are kind of tied in. And if we're going a little further out, I'm really into cooking. I don't know if that would be like a career because I just like to do it for fun. But maybe if I hadn't gotten into music and art, that'd be something I would pursue more of.
What's your specialty dish?
I don't know if I have like one specialty, but I cook all vegetarian food. So just really anything with vegetables and trying to bring those flavors to the forefront.
Nice. If you were in film, what kind of genre would you be drawn to?
I guess I would do things that are slightly less narrative based. It's almost like a Jarmusch or Lynch kind of thing, where it's more about a vibe than a narrative.
Interesting. Any ideas? Have you ever written anything?
No, I would like to do something like that sometime, but right now my time is very much consumed with all the music projects I have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Was music always like a big part of your life growing up?
Yeah, my parents got me into lessons early on, and it was in our church. It was singing 4-part harmony, and people playing, not like praise band stuff. More the singing, but that was definitely an important part of the church service growing up. So my parents weren't big musicians. They only had a record player and a few of their college records, but I don't know. I definitely was turned on to music early and always interested in it.
Yeah. So you were raised in a religious setting?
Yeah, my dad was a pastor at a Mennonite church.
Did that play a big part in your life? Like, was that something that really developed you or like inspired you in any way?
I guess more just in the sense of like a big thing for Mennonites is community. So I think maybe that aspect, but otherwise, yeah, I don't know. My dad being a pastor came at some things from slightly more like academic side. So maybe some of that rubbed off on me of being, interested in reading and learning history and delving into that side of things.
Was music an escape in any way, or was like that lifestyle, like, did you welcome that sort of lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think music was like an escape. I think it was part of it. I mean, like, my parents weren't strict, so I, would be doing church stuff, but then on like going out to see punk rock shows or, doing whatever kind of stuff we did when we were in high school. So yeah, I think they were both happening at the same time.
Cool. So they were supportive with the music.
Yeah, definitely.
That's pretty cool. That's interesting too, to know that you had a father who was a pastor growing up, especially with like the music scene in which you play. You know what I mean? Like the jam scene seems so far from any sort of religious setting.
But I do think
sense.
I think there's a concert or a festival or something fills this role of like a gathering of like ritual, a lot of things that were maybe filled by, or those roles were filled by the church and earlier on when those things didn't exist. So I think that's a big part of it for people. Most people wouldn't go to a festival if they were the only person attending. A lot of what's fun about it is that everybody's in it together and they're experiencing it at the same time.
Yeah, it's like the ritual sort of thing, and like the community, and sort of looking for that spiritual experience together.
Yeah.
So for a pretty much entirely instrumental band, other than like samples and things like that, what would you say the most important part of songwriting is? Like, how does writing a song without lyrics change the approach, or does it?
I would say first thing, when me and Luke are writing, at least for Lotus, there's the very first two things we look for are a good groove, so something that's gonna catch people on the physical side, like get them wrapped up that way, and then a really strong melody or hook. So if we're putting down ideas, the very first critique we're going to say is like, oh, this, like that melody needs to be stronger, something needs to be hookier, or like this groove needs to be improved. So that's the way you really catch people. It's like on the body side for the beat and what's happening in between the instruments, the rhythms, and then more on the mind side, or this thing with the melodies and hooks. We want that thing that like after the show ends, you're just singing that melody back, and it's just in your mind immediately, and it feels natural. And then after that, when it's all the things that are supporting that, like the harmony, the arrangements, all those things are very important in writing. And then when we're recording, it's how is everything mixed together? It's what are we emphasizing more? But yeah, at the really beginning are those two things, the rhythm and the melody.
Yeah. So in the jam scene, there's a bit of a drug culture. I've heard. I don't know if you're aware, but allegedly. But does that ever play a part in songwriting? Just knowing that is the mindset of the crowd, or has the band ever maybe indulged to spark creativity, perhaps?
No, I don't think I personally don't find that very helpful for writing. I think if you craft something that's really good, then you can build off of it to make these more extended things that work live. But I've seen plenty of people do shows where they're just coming in with no compositions and just improvising. And while it can be cool to see people's chops, and I think for crowds sometimes it's impressive to hear musicians who are listening and making changes based on the other people, and it seems almost magical that people are coming up with it on the spot. But for me, it loses all structure when when it's not tied into something. So to me, it's like you start with something that's really good, and then that can be stretched out. But if you start with nothing, what are you pulling out of that? What are you coming back to? What anchors the whole thing? So I think to have like a really well crafted song is about getting ideas, but then stripping it down to its essence and taking away anything that's not helping to build up those primary kernel ideas. So, and I don't really think drugs necessarily open you up to that kind of crafting, but maybe just like in a mindset, it's kind of like that thing, like you take a psychedelic one time, and if you have a good experience, it might just kind of like open you up, and you maybe don't need to do it again for like years. You kind of have that mindset that you can tap into.
Yeah, the reference point.
Yeah,
absolutely. I've noticed you guys seem to have quite a bit of a following, like overseas in different countries, like Japan, for example. You hear a lot about as a Lotus staple, and I think probably being an instrumental band, your music like easily transcends language barriers. Would you say?
Yeah, you would think that, but I do think there are historical things that have made it tough for a band like us to break out in Europe. I mean, it seems like it would be a no-brainer since electronic music is big over there, but you know, there's just so little history of, you know, quote unquote jam bands or improvising bands building up crowds in Europe that not too many people know about it. It's funny with Octave Cat, we end up actually selling more Octave Cat records into Europe just because I think the associations with jazz groups. So people will, I always, like if someone buys a record from Germany or something, I always ask like how they found the band, and it's inevitably something like it was listed next to Snarky Puppy on some playlist or something like that. But with Lotus and you know, other jam bands, we kind of have this insular thing in the States, and I think that's you get big over here and build up this sort of production surrounding it. It becomes much tougher to bring that to Europe, where you would kind of have to start at the beginning and you know, build it up. The whole idea of like going to multiple shows and having a band that's always changing set lists, like whenever we've had bands from Europe play with us, that's the first thing they always comment on, and they say like no one ever does this. It's like completely foreign to how anyone does anything in Europe.
So they usually just craft a set list and then tour that specific set list for the entire tour?
Yeah, just like, you know, that's how most people are doing it in the States too, you know, with the exception of jam bands, or just that whole idea of like, I'm going to go see this band 5 times a row, or, you know, I'm going to go see this band 100 times. Like that concept is definitely seems to be different.
Yeah, it does seem to be more of a North American feel.
Mm-hmm.
So having said that, I had a lot of fans that wanted to ask if you guys have any international touring plans, and specifically they were asking about Iceland or Japan.
Nothing like that in the works. You know, we've played Japan, I think 6 times, but it has been a few years. The guy who was like helping bring us over for those times and like connecting us with promoters, he's since moved out of Japan, so that might be a little more challenging, but you know, would love to go back there. Iceland, I don't think anyone from Iceland knows about Lotus, but I know like Humphreys has plans for a destination event in Iceland with the Northern Lights, and that's a cool idea. But yeah, we sometimes do these type of destination events like jam cruise or like holidays, or one of our next shows coming up is actually in a cave in Tennessee. So you know, we try to do interesting things like that here and there.
In a cave. So I think I had a few questions about that actually.
Okay.
Maybe I'll get to it. We'll come across it. Yeah, lots of fan questions. So just before we get into fan questions, I guess you mentioned you like to read. I always like, if I hear people like to read, I like to know what they're currently reading. Do you have any good books on the go?
I just finished a book, but the last couple things I read, I actually read that Michael Pollan book about the history of psychedelics called, I think it's called How to Change a Mind or How to Change Your Mind.
Yeah.
That was pretty interesting. And then this Spanish sort of experimental novel series called the Nosea trilogy that I thought was really good. But I'm a big fan of like a lot of the mid-century white male authors, for better or for worse. Like I love me some like Don DeLillo and Graham Greene and Cormac McCarthy and things of that nature.
Awesome. All right. Well, maybe we can try to breeze through these fan questions and then I can let you go.
Okay.
I'll just do them in order as they came in so that there's no rhyme or reason why we ask in this order. So Spencer Mendoza asked, if Lotus crash landed on a mountain in a survival situation, who would get eaten first?
I don't know. I mean, Mike Rempel's the smallest, so he might go quickest in the cold. I don't know. We're all pretty skinny, though, so maybe none of us really stand much of a chance.
Dan Snack Williams asked, does Chuck put mayonnaise on his hot dog?
I have no idea what that's a reference to.
I don't know either. He said he might have heard it somewhere. It's a terrible rumor.
I don't remember. I don't think I've ever seen Chuck eat a hot dog, so I really can't comment on that.
Pat Drzinski and Alicia JL asked, why don't you play Ball of Energy anymore? And will you ever play it again?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. It's like one of those things we just have. There's a lot of Lotus songs. That one in particular was originally used a melodica, and so if we aren't set up to play a melodica or change the arrangement, it's a little hard to play. So I don't know. There's a lot of songs that sometimes we go back and for special occasion rework them or break them out, but that's kind of the challenge of having a 250 song catalog to choose from. Not everything can get played.
Evan Meyer wants to know, where did you buy those Peter Pan boots?
I think I know what he's talking about. This pair of vegan black Chelsea boots I wear a lot are from a vegan boutique designer in New York called Brave New Gentleman, and they are very nice.
I would love to see them.
Probably look up any picture of me and I'm probably wearing them.
Ooh, they're the go-to stage boot.
Yeah, and also I try not to have that many pairs of footwear that I own, so that's in the rotation.
Nice. How many vegan leather jackets do you own?
One. I auctioned off the other one when Brendan's house burned down, so we auctioned that one off for $500, and then I bought a new one.
Nice. Chris Paul McKenty wants to know if you love the Minka Guy's fly-ass red leather jacket.
Oh, yeah, Ari. I mean, I would never pull that off, but Ari definitely has enviable jackets and an enviable beard. That guy can grow like a 5-foot beard in like 6 months.
That is what all men aspire to. He also wants to know, boxers or briefs?
That's a little personal.
Okay, moving on. The answer was nothing, I assume. Okay, you guys have played Red Rocks and a lot of big festivals and venues. What are some of the cooler small festivals and venues you've played that stand out?
Well, for festivals, like Summer Dance is our own, or kind of our own festival. We play 6 sets, and for smaller festivals, that's definitely a lot of fun. For smaller shows, I guess I don't know what is considered small, but like Belly Up in Aspen is only a 450 cap room or something, and that's always a really fun time. I mean, Aspen is gorgeous, and for this room being small, they still have kind of all the amenities and production that you would look for in a bigger room.
I've seen videos from that venue. Do they always have the projection screen for every artist?
Well, it's a LED screen that's built into the wall, so if the artists want to use it, it's available.
Oh, nice. Do you guys use it?
I think we usually use it a little bit, not like the whole time, but I think Scott or LD will use it occasionally when we play there.
Just as a play with it for a little bit. Have some
Yeah,
fun.
I mean, we don't do video that often, but occasionally we do. So we have like some content that's specific for certain things that we've developed. We might start doing more. Actually, our latest Red Rock show, we ran a low-res video system, and I developed my own program that uses triggers on the drums and information from like what I'm playing with my computer and keyboard to generate some of the video in real time, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that sounds awesome. When's that going to be broken out?
Well, we used it when we played at Red Rocks in April, and so it kind of depends if we bring out a video wall for other shows. But if we do bring that out, we would run that system again.
Gotcha. So you mentioned Summer Dance. Brendan Burns wants to know, will there be a fan-written set list for Summer Dance?
I don't know. We haven't planned what we're doing for Summer Dance yet, but yeah, we did that last year, and it was definitely pretty interesting to see what people came up with. It reaffirmed to me that if you really want a creative set list, you have to have us write it or Luke write it. But a few people did come up with some pretty creative things. So we took a challenge of playing one of the ones that was a bit more involved. But if you're talking about writing segues and things like that, it definitely helps to have some knowledge of music theory to know what makes sense in terms of keys and tempos and moving
Right.
around and structuring a set. So, sometimes the best structured set list is, or I would say most of the time, the best structured set list is going to come from us and not from the fan. But it is cool to get their perspective and see what people want us to maybe break out that, we haven't played in a long time, or I don't know. I think it's definitely fun for fans to try to come up with something.
Yeah, maybe do like a vote on certain songs, and then once you have the list compiled, you guys can sort of arrange it in the best way possible.
Yeah, that'd be another idea. Well, we always try to come up with something creative for Summer Dance, since those are a lot of hardcore fans, and it can be tough to shock them at a normal show. So we have to kind of pull out all the stops at Summer Dance to throw them curveballs.
Yeah. And what are the chances?
Mix a lot of metaphors all together at once.
Right. So just as an aside to that question, what are the chances of Summer Dance being canceled?
I would say very slim.
I don't know what that's in reference to, but D. Michaels wants to know what's going on with Rempel's wrist. Some fans have been noticing some flexing and discomfort on stage. And I think they're concerned.
I don't think he has any problems with his wrist. I don't know. When you play a 2.5 hour, 3 hour show, whatever, multiple nights in a row, sometimes it wears down to you. So probably just trying to prevent injury rather than, I think, actually being injured.
Right. Niraj Van Mali and Mikael Hood want to know, why is Hammerstrike your favorite song?
This is this joke that Niraj always tells me, that Hammerstrike's my favorite song. Neeraj is a friend of mine, and this is this like long running joke, which I don't know where he got it in his mind, but now he just tells me this every time I see him.
So he even snuck it in on this.
He's everywhere. He haunts my dreams.
That's awesome. Justin Mays wants to know, who is your favorite DJ?
My favorite DJ. You know what? I haven't like. I would say I'm more into producers than DJs, but as far as like straight DJing, a few years ago I saw a really good set from Juan McLean, who also sometimes performs as a band called The Juan McLean. But yeah, I saw him do a really good DJ set at the Dolphin here in Philly. But you know, I haven't seen any just straight up kind of like house or techno DJs in a while. So maybe I need to get out to a few more of those events.
Who's your favorite producer?
Probably Fortet.
Oh yeah, I've heard a lot of, even from your interviews, I've heard you mention him a lot.
Yeah, he does a really good job of kind of mixing something that would be similar to techno, but with something that's more kind of like a krautrock sort of thing. I don't know. It's electronic music, but it has like a naturalistic feel. So yeah. I think it's always good stuff.
What Brian Bischoff wants to know, what's the hardest song to play?
Hardest song to play. Honestly, for me, Umbilical Moonrise is, I have really high action on my bass, and it's really taxing to hold down the left hand while I play this tapping part. So that's just physically really tough to play.
Yeah. Is there a reason why you go with the high action of your bass, or is that just what you started out with and got used to?
I'd say a little bit of that, but also I just, like, whenever I play around on someone's bass that has really low action, I feel like I don't have to work hard enough for the notes. It's just like too easy to kind of like play fast. So yeah, I feel like high action lends itself to more rhythmic playing and to yeah, just being like really like if you're gonna play a note, you really have to go for it. You can't just be tapping it with your left hand.
Right. Do you find it keeps you in the pocket a little easier?
Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. I guess I've just played that bass pretty much exclusively for a long time, so I don't really know like an exact comparison. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I want it to be physically involved. So I guess that part probably helps add to the groove or makes you get in the pocket.
Yeah. What would you say your favorite keyboard is and why?
It kind of changes based on whatever I bought the latest, but I'm definitely big into modular stuff, so that can change all the time. But classic, I'd say the cat, the octave cat for mono synth, that thing just always sounds good. And if you need a like 70s sounding mono synth, that thing has never really done me wrong.
Yeah. And inspired a band name.
Yes. That too. Although we don't bring that out to play live with Octave Cat, but maybe we should.
Sean Chappelle wants to know if you could swap lives with a famous jazz man, who would it be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, a lot of the greats were also heroin addicts and lived pretty tough lives. So,
So all of them.
I don't know. Maybe like McCoy Tyner, like more of like a sideman, but also like a badass.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just being able to shred the keys, which I don't know how to do, but would love to know how to do. So yeah, I'm going with McCoy Tyner.
Some old Coltrane stuff.
Oh yeah.
What's in store for the Caverns? How many times are you guys going to play nonstop?
How many times are we going to play nonstop? I don't understand that part, but
no idea.
We're just starting to put together some ideas for that, so I don't want to ruin any surprises, but we definitely want to make that a special show. We've never played there before, so I don't know what the challenges are in terms of like the production of the sound. But assuming all that stuff is under control, I think we just want to like use the space to our advantage to really make a show that envelopes people. But I think that's what we try to do with every show, but maybe we can just kind of harness that in a different way while we're playing in a cave.
Yeah. So you guys are planning things right now. How far out do you write a set list for a show like that?
It depends what it is. Like Disc Jam, since we needed to get songs to John early, that was planned out, or at least the songs that we were going to play was planned out about 4 months in advance. And similar type of thing for Summer Dance. If we're doing something special, we're planning things out pretty far in advance. But if we're just on tour, usually it's more just like the day before we're kind of looking at a potential song list, and then even just completing the actual set list like right before the show.
Yeah. Just like rehearse some of the songs that need to be rehearsed beforehand and just throw it together.
Yeah. Or, Luke will kind of have a list of things for sound check that he'll go over, and then kind of base how things are feeling there. And there's a lot of factors that go into it, like what we played last time we were in that same market or in that same room, or what we played the night before, or what we've played a lot on a tour, what we haven't played. All those things are kind of factored in. So then after the sound check, he kind of finishes putting together the actual set list, and then usually we stick pretty close to that. Maybe like a song has to be taken out if we're running low on time or something, or every once in a while we'll call an audible and switch something. But for the most part, we stick to what's written.
Right. Brad Friedman wants to know, did you know that other than a few festival appearances, it's been 6 years since you last made a proper tour stop in Florida?
I did know that. So, and I don't know if that's going to be remedied anytime soon. So, sorry, Brad, you're just going to have to fly out to see us where we are.
Suck it, Brad. And Brian wants to know, you guys are always trying new genres and styles. Do you guys have an idea of which direction you're going to take your material after the positive reception of frames per second? Are you going to stick to similar vibes, or are you going to try to maybe reinvent yourselves like in the past?
Well, we have like I said, a big batch of demos, and I guess in some ways it's kind of similar to frames per second. I mean, even frames per second, I would say it wasn't stylistically one thing. It was kind of all over the place. I think the thread that kept that together was just kind of how we recorded it, like tracking it more live with everybody all at once instead of doing the like build something up part by part in the studio sort of thing. So I think we'll probably try to do something in a similar way next time, just because I really like the efficiency of it. Like, you know, if me and Luke put in the work beforehand, really getting the demos really crafted well, then we can kind of eliminate that idea of, you know, trying things out in the studio and building things up one at a time, and kind of take advantage of the skills we have of 20 years of playing in a band and do it all at once.
Is there any genres that you guys haven't really touched on that maybe interest you, or that you want to try to put a Lotus touch on?
You know, I think it would be interesting to do something in a more like classical minimalist vein, like with Lotus maybe filled out with either more like strings or like a percussion ensemble or something like that. That's more toward a classical thing. I don't know if it would really translate well to a live show, but I think it would be just like an interesting project. But yeah, I think one of the reasons we haven't taken time to work on something like that is the like challenge of bringing that into what we do in our live show. But maybe as like a special project sometime.
Yeah, that'd be cool to record the album with like an orchestra type deal, and then maybe for like a special show, if you're playing with like a band with strings, and maybe bring them out with you to do a performance, would be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, that's I always like doing that stuff when we can. I mean, I think to some degree we work that stuff in sometimes with, I mean, that's the whole idea with most of the time what we're doing with the sampling. It's like something that was done on a modular synth, but bringing that out to every show would be pretty challenging. So, or, you know, bringing out a string quartet all the time would be challenging, but we can record them in the studio, and then I can play it back on my foot pedal for like behind Midwest storefronts or something like that. So it is something I do like to do, but like for the last album, we kept it like no guests, like really focused down on just Lotus playing. But I think I might try to bring in a few different instruments on a couple things for the next project. I definitely hear some like string and horn things on a few compositions.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, it's always really fun to arrange for instruments like that, because you can just, I mean, like you listen to that Curtis Mayfield stuff or things of that range where it's like these great Quincy Jones arrangements for horns and strings, and kind of just realize the cinematic power of adding that to something that's already has a good groove.
So where do you see Lotus in 5, 10, or 15 years? What does the future look like?
I mean, I like what we're doing right now is, you know, I could see maintaining this for quite a while. Like we don't tour nearly as much as some other bands, so we kind of try to keep our sanity that way, not try to wear ourselves out too much, and kind of get a good split between studio stuff and live stuff. So as long as it, people still feel inspired to play, I think we're kind of continue kind of on a similar route that we're doing now. But I think it is, you got to always push yourself to find new things to make sure you don't get into these doldrums.
Yeah.
But
So
I don't
what's
know.
in store for
We've been doing it for 20 years, and I feel like there's so many things I still want to explore. I feel like it's not anywhere near slowing down.
Yeah. Other than what we've talked about, is there anything else? Like you said, so many things you want to explore. What comes to mind right offhand?
Well, just like some of the stuff that I do with Octave Cat and Beardo Bees, those like the more like jazz side of things, and then more of the like modular synth and analog things are things that I definitely want to keep delving into when I can. And I bring that stuff into Lotus a little bit where it's appropriate, but those kind of areas definitely open up things to me, because they're things that are like outside of what I originally did for Lotus, or what we would like, our first kind of go-to is. So I think there's a lot to be explored there.
Yeah. Anything in 2020 planned? Anything coming right up?
Yeah, we're just starting to get some like touring sort of sketched out for 2020. So nothing that I can publicly say right now, but we are working on stuff. We are still about 6 months away. So.
All right, man. So the new album, Frames Per Second, that's out now. Anything else that you want to plug?
Yeah, well, if people haven't seen it, Frames Per Second, obviously the title's a reference to film, and the album exists as a film of us, recording and playing it in the studio as well. So definitely check that out if you haven't. But yeah, just some festivals and a few shows through the summer. A lot of kind of special shows like the Cave, and weekend out at Mishawaka Amphitheater in Colorado. Some great festivals coming up. So yeah, while we're not all over the country, definitely some cool opportunities to catch Lotus in the next few months.
Yeah, some real cool shows coming up. Right on, man. Well, thank you very much for doing this.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good one.
You too.